everyone, I'm Captain Logan and welcome back to the vast anonymous Comic Vault. It's time for new acquisitions, and it's been a little while since we talked about brand new comics, so I thought I would run through a select assortment of books from the last few weeks, beginning with this week's books, because that's probably the stuff you care more about, and then you can just turn off the video and not watch the rest. Or you can skip around, because there's timestamps. You're welcome. There are a number of books that I am still playing catch-up on, and got all kinds of things going on, and still have a box full of comics I haven't gone through. You know the drill. I've said this the last few times. It's still true. Catching up on some stuff. Not anything like finished yet, so it'll be a while before I can start talking again about Star Wars and Darth Vader and Venom Space Knight and the Angela book and the Ultimates. There's a number of things that I'm buying and haven't caught up on yet, and some things I haven't even started reading yet. I've only read the first couple issues of Spider-Man 2099, still buying and collecting that, so I'm spending a lot of money on things that I'm not enjoying yet, and I don't mean that I'm not enjoying because they're not good, I mean because I haven't read them, so there's no telling yet. I am very critical, but I can't be critical of a thing that I haven't read yet. I want to say thanks as always to Elite Comics at Overland Park, Kansas for helping me out with the show. If you are ever in the Kansas City area, be sure to check them out. They're an absolutely fantabulous story, and we sure appreciate everything they do for us. Fantabulous is reserved for awesome places that make shows like this possible, and now I feel like PBS. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Like I said, beginning with this week's books, let's go ahead and we'll just do this kind of potpourri, not even paying attention to what the publisher is, just kind of going through random books, because that's always fun. I don't even know what the order is. That's how organized I am today. I'm just going to talk about whatever pops up. Let's get started. So Old Man Logan, we're already 2 more issues down since the last time I talked about this. I talked about the first issue and liked it quite a bit. Now we've got issues 2 and 3. Still absolutely adoring Sorrentino's art. I'm to a point where anything Andrea Sorrentino, I find myself kind of wanting to pick up, and this is more and more differentiating itself in style and tone from the Green Arrow book that Lemire and Sorrentino did together. So what's going on in this book is Wolverine's got a hit list. He thinks back in time in present day Marvel, and of course it's confirmed in the 3rd issue, but of course we had a pretty good inkling that this was the case already, and there were some very nice hints of it, and of course honestly, I think it's obvious if you're paying attention to Secret Wars and stuff, and if you know anything about the original Old Man Logan book, which once again, I still have not gotten around to reading, but I know things about it, and this book is very informative, of course, that was an alternate future as opposed to where the Marvel Universe was going, and Wolverine doesn't know that, so he thinks that instead of going to an alternate dimension, or instead of being, I guess more swept up in the new post-Secret Wars continuity of the kind of what I like to think of now as the Marvel Pangea, pulling together a number of different universes all to create the new 616 that now includes Miles Morales, etc., etc. He is going around trying to knock off supervillains that create the Wasteland, which is the future that he came from, and he's dealt with one already, and now he's dealt with Butcher, and now he's going after more people that we're familiar with, and he's looking for Bruce Banner, and nobody knows where Bruce Banner is because we have a different Hulk right now, and he is starting to get really confused because there are a lot of things in this world that don't exist in his future, and he's just chalking it up to, at first, it's probably just something that I didn't notice because I wasn't paying attention, like female Thor and characters that exist in his future that have died, and I kind of like the tongue-in-cheekness of, we're playing with the way comic book worlds work, where he's like, well, different people put on mantles of characters we're familiar with all the time, and characters come back from the dead all the time. I probably just missed it. And finally, in the 3rd issue, we start really delving into that, and I'm glad that we're already dealing with it, and we're not stretching it out ad nauseum. I'm wondering how long this formula can continue, of Wolverine trying to knock people off of this hit list, as he's trying to prevent the future, when he starts deciding that the female Hawkeye, who he's teaming up with in the third issue, is right, and he comes from an alternate universe as opposed to an alternate future, and she figures it out pretty quickly and is almost positive that's what's going on. And I wonder how much of it is going to be his being in denial about it and refusing to believe it, or deciding he doesn't even care, because it is possible that some of these people would still create something like the Wasteland, and because he's seen what another version of them is capable of, and because those characters are close enough to what they are in his future, this is just what I'm guessing is probably going to end up happening. Wolverine will decide, I don't even care that I'm from a different place and not actually your future, because these people need to be dealt with, and this way we can be sure that that the Wasteland or something like it never happens. I also like that he's starting to go way too far in the violence department because he can now. He had family reasons in the Wasteland where he wasn't able to waste people, and he had to be careful because he was going to put his family in danger, and people were going to come after him if he slaughtered people. And also he had to provide for his family, and he had to be careful because his healing factor doesn't work as well as it used to. He's become an old man, and his powers aren't as good, and so he had a lot of reasons that he had to start controlling himself, but it wasn't for a new morality that he built. He's still the same old Wolverine. He just became really tame by the sake of necessity. And so now that all that's gone away, he's kind of gotten that out of his system, and it's almost like, in a way, and I don't know if this is completely a fair comparison, but it's almost like an alcoholic being surrounded by alcohol again and deciding that it's okay to start drinking again, and he's losing himself in the violence. And it's very interesting, and it's exciting, and I like it a lot. I don't think we're not getting as much done in each issue as I might have expected based on that first issue, and especially the third issue struck me as being kind of slim on material, and I don't know how to describe it. I didn't even feel like it was action over story so much as just it felt over really quick. And I don't know if it's because I was gonna say like full page spreads and stuff, but it's not really that, because it's Sorrentino, and we have a whole lot of different panels and things, and it's hard to describe. I mean, there are certainly plenty of places where there's not a whole lot of dialogue, and it's a kind of just emoting or brooding or heading off to a place silently. So I guess it's just a quick read, and because of that, I'm it's sort of like Moon Knight or Hawkeye. It's just kind of a quick read, and that's not really a problem, but we're not getting a ton of story done in each issue, and that's certainly something to know, I guess, going in, but it's not even really a criticism. It's not a problem, because I'm certainly enjoying it, but I guess what I might be saying is that this is likely to read a little bit better together than month to month, and yet it's certainly organized in a logical fashion, where Wolverine's going after a person in an issue, and then he finds someone, and we see what happens when he finds that person, and then we move on. Really cool character reveal at the end. That's exciting, and I would say this is certainly still either a pick up and put on your pull list or wait for trade. I would start at the beginning of this one and not jump in right now, but even if you haven't read the original Old Man Logan, you won't have any problem, because I haven't, figuring out what you're looking at, especially if you're familiar with Marvel and you're just familiar with the new status quo. But this is also an okay way to even get familiar with that status quo. And I think it is a really cool way to get Wolverine in there somewhere while he's still dead, and it doesn't feel like a cheat. It's really fun. Frankly, at this point, this feels less redundant than a lot of Wolverine did to me, just things that I happened to read right before he died. I'd rather read about this version right now, I think, and I think it's got legs, and it's potentially got legs, and really enjoyed it. Let's move on now to Spider-Man number 2. This is Miles Morales, and he is, of course, in the 616 universe now, and he's working alongside and in the same world as the regular Spider-Man, and kind of earning his webs, as it were, and Spider-Man, Peter Parker, gave him permission at one point, apparently, to continue being Spider-Man and call himself that. So there's two Spider-Man, however you want to say it. And Peter Parker is starting to maybe change his mind a little bit at the beginning of this, and then when the Avengers realize what he did for them at the end of last issue when they were all taken out by Blackheart, and he came in and found a way to deal with him and then fights him and is really effective again. Here, he's starting to build credibility with the Avengers, and things are starting to go his way a little bit, and in a very amusing way at the end of the issue, of course, stuff starts to hit the fan a little bit, but not in the superhero world, but more in his personal life. And of course, that's all I'll say. But that is really vintage Spider-Man stuff, classic Spider-Man, where when one part of his life is going really well, things have to start falling apart on the other end, and Spider-Man was always about personal problems and how to juggle these different lives, and that being a superhero is not easy, and asking the question of what sorts of sacrifices should you make. Almost slipped off my chair and died. What sorts of sacrifices you should make in each side of your life for the sake of the other one. We're dealing with an issue here that I didn't know if we would ever deal with Miles Morales. And I think Bendis is handling it really maturely and with care, and that is the public finding out about Miles Morales' skin color and how people react to it. And I love the way he's handling that and the way Miles is dealing with it. And I kind of would have resisted it had Bendis not gone the direction he's going, and this feels very much a Miles Morales character, and it's consistent with things that he's done dealing with race and stuff before, and that is Miles doesn't care about that stuff, and he doesn't like that the public knows and he doesn't even care that they know. He doesn't like the way they're responding to it because he's afraid. It seems like that all people are going to care about now is the fact that he's a minority, is the fact that he's black, and of course they don't know, and he brings this up that he's also half Hispanic, and the point isn't, they should know that and they should be all politically correct about it and call him what he is. The point is, and of course, he wouldn't want them to know too much about him because he's trying to keep the fact that he's a superhero a secret. But he wants people to be colorblind. The whole point of the Spider-Man suit going head to toe is that anybody could be in that suit. And I really like the way Bendis is handling that, and I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does with that moving forward and how the public continues to perceive this new Spider-Man now that they've got the differences in skin color between the two. And I thought it was really... it made a lot of sense, the way that's handled, because if you get your costume ripped up, people are going to be able to find that out about you, and if you are a minority, it starts to narrow it down at least a little bit in trying to figure out who it is, although not very much. But anyway, I was impressed that I was enjoying that, and that it was as thoughtfully and tastefully done as it was, and I recommend this over the Amazing Spider-Man book right now, to nobody's surprise. Read the first issue, didn't love it, it's okay, but I will continue to buy this and review it, and would recommend it to anybody that loves classic Spider-Man. And folks that don't mind a little bit of that kind of political stuff mixed in with their escapist superhero books, with that kind of, and we do this a lot with superhero comics now, of course, that kind of social commentary. Like I said, I think it's handled really well. I think it is still a really fun, enjoyable book. It's not preachy about that stuff. It's just the world he lives in, and that's also really consistent Spider-Man stuff, because you go back to the 60s, and as much as humanly possible, Stanley, as much as he was allowed to, Stanley would try to deal with current issues that would affect a teenager at the time, and we're dealing with that guy. I don't even know if Stanley would have called it social commentary, but just in a more realistic sense, if the world had superheroes and supervillains and supernatural stuff in it, what would it be like? Next up, Daredevil number 4, which I am continuing to enjoy more and more each issue. This is by Charles Soule with art by Ron Garney and Garan Suduka. This is, again, really traditional Frank Miller type Daredevil. It's street level, it's stylized, it's dark and stuff. What we're dealing with right now is this guy named Ten Fingers. That's the villain that Daredevil is dealing with, and is intimately connected to Daredevil's new sidekick we're discovering as we move along. I don't reveal in what way that is, but I think it's really cool that this isn't just a random new villain that we've created, but he's very personally connected to a character that I'm coming to appreciate and care about. And I think Daredevil's sidekick Blindspot is becoming a more interesting character all the time. And once again, some of the real-world current issues that it's tackling, it's dealing with in a tasteful and careful way, and I like careful is not the thoughtful way, and I like that a lot. Where his sidekick is an illegal immigrant, and he's kind of standing up for illegal immigrants in Chinatown. And so he reminds Matt Murdock a little bit of himself when he was fighting just for Hell's Kitchen, and now, of course, Daredevil is one of New York's major superheroes, and he kind of deals with everything all over the place. But this guy's kind of an underdog, man of the people, and he likes that a lot about him, and I'm beginning to also. And so, anyway, Daredevil is working with Steve Rogers a little bit here, and Steve Rogers is cropping up more and more in books I'm reading this week, where he's trying to figure out how he's going to deal with Ten Fingers, and he's thinking about, he's starting to compare himself to Ten Fingers and wondering if he's not too much like him, and if, and he, he's questioning his beliefs, he's questioning his own morality, and he's wondering if he hasn't kind of created this mystique around himself as a god in a similar kind of way, maybe a microcosm to the way Ten Fingers is doing it. And I like that he's questioning all of that. I hope he doesn't get whiny about it, but he's not yet, and I think it's just an interesting, then it's kind of in the background, we're not spending too much time on it, but then it's also a thing that it comes back to bite him, and he has reason to really think about it at the end. So it's interesting stuff. But the idea with Ten Fingers is that you have this guy who has built him a church around himself and built himself up as a god. And Matt Murdock is outside of the Daredevil guys, is talking to him about the legality of that, and of course, it's what he's doing isn't really illegal as long as Matt Murdock can't prove that he's hurting anyone or manipulating anyone with this cult. And what makes it complicated is that Ten Fingers comes right out and says that he used to be the kind of person that Matt Murdock is claiming that he is, and now he's saying, I'm just about helping people like you, and that's where he and Daredevil are, that's where Daredevil is comparing himself to him. I'm about helping people, and how do you know I'm not a god? And what's, and I'm saying things that are in, he points out of context, of course, Bible verses, and I think he evokes the Quran or some other holy book, and he's saying, these old texts are able to get away with it. Why can't I? You can't disprove what I'm saying. And of course, he's actually this really scary, dangerous guy, but it's sort of like Dr. Doom. It's hard to prove some of the stuff that he's doing, and he's built this big culture around himself, and that's all really interesting. The way the Hand is starting to build into that is also kind of fascinating, and there's also some really thrilling action in this, and some good suspense, good sense of urgency, and I would even say that Soul is doing a wonderful job of making each issue of this so far decent jumping on points. I would say that you could pick this issue up right now, not having read the others, and continue to read forward, maybe pick up the others later on. I would say if you like gritty Daredevil, this is definitely your bag, and even if you liked Wade and you didn't want to see it get back to this, and even if you're irritated about or going back to people not knowing who Daredevil is, I would say still give it a shot, because I think it's quite good. I don't think it's Wade good yet, but I hesitate to say this. I think it might even have a shot at getting that good. I like it a lot. And more and more we're discovering that and this is a cop-out certainly, but it's not a retcon with, and just in case you're curious, it's not a retcon with people not knowing who Matt Murdock is anymore. That's not a thing we did where with Secret Wars we just reset it. Matt, and I don't know exactly how because I must have missed where it was, but Matt Murdock has the... Okay, it is a retcon, but it's a retcon with a story device because I'm not saying that One More Day is good, but it's done the One More Day way where he was able to do something that makes everyone forget. What's weird is he talks about that with Captain America, with Steve Rogers. See, I can't call him Captain America right now because he's not. With Steve Rogers, and he tells Steve that he used to know, and Steve doesn't ask him who he is now. And so I'm not sure about some of that stuff. But all I'm saying is, because again, yes, it's cop-out stuff, but if you're irritated with it because you think they just hit a reset button and you're annoyed because Secret Wars is a Marvel reboot, I'm not running into a lot of stuff yet that is just straight up, we decided to start over and pretend like things didn't happen. Secret Wars seemed to be more of a cleanup operation and a way to get more consistent advertising going with the movie, which again I don't love, with the movies. There's stuff about Marvel I don't like right now, certainly, but I'm just saying that you would be more at home if you jumped into most of the Marvel books right now than you might think you'd be, and if that doesn't entice you to jump on a Marvel and keep reading, I completely understand. That's totally cool. I'm just saying that I'm kind of pleasantly surprised that we at least didn't reset it and pretend like the Mark Waid stuff didn't happen, because that stuff was wonderful, and I like that it's still continuing to inform this a little bit. All right, moving right along. Don't have a lot to say about this yet until I see all of it. I kind of hesitate to read much with this. I'm reading it. To read into much and to give you a read on any of it, but here is book 3 of Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. Of course, Azzarello, informed by Miller, with art by with art by Andy Kubert. This is getting exciting now. I was enjoying the first 2 issues and interested to see where it was headed, and it hasn't done anything yet that's turned me off to it and made me go, it's sort of like Dark Knight Strikes Again. It's really faithful to the tone of the original. It's treating itself like the big event that it is, but not in an irritating way. It's epic. It's exciting. It's got that Miller flavor, but it reads more like Miller in his heyday, and it still has a good Azzarello flourish to it. So it's a nice mix of those 2 guys, and it's all of a sudden, it's all about a group of Kryptonians that are... We got a whole lot of guys with delusions of godhood this week, and in the books I'm reviewing, and there's a bunch of Kryptonians that show up and are trying to force everyone to worship them as unto gods. And so Batman, much to his chagrin, feels the need to go to Superman for help because he can't take these guys by himself. He barely was able to take on Superman in The Dark Knight Returns by himself, and now he's going to have to deal with an entire group of Kryptonians, and this is a Bruce Wayne that, we thought he was old before. He's getting so old now he can barely even put on the Batsuit and do anything, and he's having to read with reading glasses, and he's grooming Robin to, Kelly to become the next Batman, and I don't know, or I guess Batgirl, woman, something. He's not coming right out and saying that she'll ever put on a Batsuit, but he's starting to say things at the beginning of this like, she's becoming better than I ever was, she's smarter than I am, and I think that's all kind of neat. So I wonder if there won't be a passing the torch thing by the end of this, and if she might not end up in a Batsuit, which I think would be really potentially cool to see. This is a world that you just get lost in, and it's so much fun to be here again. This is a thing I didn't think I wanted, and I'm really enjoying it. That's all I really want to say about it right now until I've got all of it together to really get into the thematic and character stuff with it. Bruce Wayne having to go to Superman reluctantly is kind of a cool thing. I like that we're going all the way with the Kryptonian stuff. The Fortress of Solitude has a lot of stuff that we remember there, and so we've got this very gritty world, but then we're still dealing with the over-the-top alien comic book stuff, all the lore, and I like that a lot. We've got a Superman who has taken himself out of the game and only comes back in because he feels responsible when he finds out that it's Kryptonians. So this, in some ways, is kind of like the Man of Steel returns now, where he's being brought out of retirement like Batman was in the first place. I haven't read Dark Knight Strikes Again in a long time, so I don't remember if that was a Superman's out of the game for a while and comes back thing. I don't think it is, though. I think he's there. But again, it's been a while, so that might be a double beat, and I don't remember it, just in case anybody is like, well, hey, Captain Logan, don't give it too much credit for that. But if this is the first time that was done in this, then that's kind of a neat reversal and in contrast and echoing to what we did with the Dark Knight Returns. It's been a bit since I read the first 2 issues, so I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details, but just this I enjoyed a lot, and this is potentially going to end up being a must-read if you're waiting on it. Certainly, this is a fine wait for trade thing. Obviously, see, I wouldn't say start here because that's weird, but this, I would say, of the first 3 issues, just from what I remember, this is the most memorable of them, and this would be the thing that would maybe make you want to keep going. So maybe if somebody you know has a copy, I was going to say can get the digital code, but they don't do that with DC. But if somebody you know has a copy and you can just read it real quick, then that might make you want to keep going with it. So I would say either wait for trade or pick up this issue and see what you think of it. Next up, let's look at Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #1. I feel like this should be #2, because we had a #0 and it reads like a #1, but especially having read this, and I'll get into that in a second. But anyway, this is by Kyle Higgins with art by Henry Presetya, and I'm enjoying this immensely. Got a couple of minor qualms with it, but the thing I like the most about this so far is, and with issue 0 too, is the idea of taking Power Rangers from where it was after the Green Ranger saga and just kind of moving forward in its own direction and starting to make the stakes feel a little higher, deal with the mortality of the situation, have maybe slightly more consistent rules while we're still being very faithful and tongue-in-cheek about the absurdity of the material that we're dealing with, but letting the characters have a little bit more dimension and have them talk about actual things of substance and seem like sort of real people, while somehow or rather still capturing the some of the innocence of the original. I think Kyle Higgins is doing an incredible job here and I envy him his job here. I wish I got to write this book. I think he's doing a marvelous job with it, where he is making it, like I said, he's giving more depth to these characters, but they still kind of feel like the characters we had in the TV show too. I'm impressed with him for doing that. We've got putties that feel like they could actually maybe cause damage to people, partly just because they come in larger droves. What's fun about seeing this in a comic book is that the scale of it is just a lot more epic, and so you don't have like 16 putties show up, fight the Power Rangers in a park, they hit them a couple times and they fall down. You've got droves and droves of them that all show up in a big city street, and it seems like they could maybe overtake people and be a problem, and that's kind of cool. We're dealing with collateral damage in this book, which is really neat. We've got people publicly not trusting the Green Ranger because they knew he was bad, and now he's working with the Power Rangers, and his Dragon Zord took out a bridge, and people aren't sure about him. And I really like the discussion of some of the stuff that always happens in the show and how it would actually affect people, like, more if this were what was happening in real life. Like, what would people actually do if they had common sense? And people trust the Power Rangers, but they don't like that they don't hold press conferences and talk about things and tell people what's up. And so there's a lot of things that happen in secret that nobody ever knows about, and it makes them a little bit irritated with the Power Rangers, and I think that's really cool. you've got the beginnings of some potentially interesting character threads, and I just wish we went a little bit farther with it in this issue. Something is going on with Zach that's making him fall asleep in class, and that is preoccupying him, and he's not talking about. But that's all we know. We don't know anything else about that yet. I was a little surprised that that's all we got about that in an issue, especially, again, since we already had a Zero issue. And I don't think that was kind of supposed to be a setup thing to whet your palate for this and give you a bunch of action to get you excited. I don't think we get any more done in this than we did there. I mean, per capita, like we go a little farther, but I would have expected in your number 1 past that setup Zero issue that you would have gotten more done moving forward than you did in that first issue, and it doesn't quite happen. This whole thing with Rita Repulsa talking in Tommy's head is really cool, and I'm enjoying. It could get old if it goes on too long, but I like that people aren't trusting Tommy, and they kind of have a good reason not to trust Tommy, and he's trying, and he's doing the best he can, but he's got the devil in his ear, and that's all really cool. And you know, when you compare this material to the original, it's night and day, and it feels even more sophisticated, like even more sophisticated storytelling than it really actually is, just because we're doing any of that sort of thinking at all, and because it doesn't feel formulaic. And it's fun because it plays with the formula. It is Rita Repulsa sends a monster, we beat it with a Megazord, the end, but what we're looking at in this book so far anyway seems to be more what happens around the formula, and that's all, of course, a lot more interesting than just the hit things, have some technobabble, act like the Megazord might not make it, and then we all win in the end because we're the good guys. And I think it's going to continue to play with that formula and still be that, but how we get there, the nuances of it, the stuff around it, is what the book is more about, and I think that's really cool. Like I said, my only complaints right now are A, 20 pages and not quite enough done in them. B, if we have a backup feature still with Bulk and Skull. It's 2 pages. It's kind of nothing. I wish that those 2 pages could be devoted to more of the A story and that it could be a 22-page book instead of a 20-page book. That's my complaint. There's not even a ton of action in this issue, and I don't really mind that. I thought it was, and what action is there is awesome, and I love this art, but I was very excited to have Power Rangers issue that was just this talky and that I was still enjoying and still had that flavor. It's really cool. I guess I maybe resisted the and people hate it when I say this. I guess I maybe resisted the manga flavor of this a little bit, just because Power Rangers is such an Americanized thing that I love to see more of like a mix of that instead of like all the people look like they're in a Japanese comic. And yet the flavor of it is so its own. It has a very unique aesthetic that it's growing on me already, and I think I already don't care about that. So that's a testament to this, because that's a thing that takes me out of a thing that's supposed to be an American comic kind of quickly sometimes, and this I'm not having that with. The flavor of it's great. We're also gonna get, starting in May, a Pink Ranger mini-series, maybe a monthly. I'm not sure what it is, but written by the guy doing Batgirl, Brendan Fletcher, and drawn by Kelly Thompson from Jim and the Holograms, and I think that could be really cool, and I'm excited about getting more Power Ranger books because I'm really digging this. Okay, that's all the stuff for this week, so now I'm going to blow through some other stuff. I'm going to be really lazy and just blow through some stuff. The first one is Batman and Ninja Turtles number 3. Jason did a little spoiler video on this. This is still really fun. I'm hoping that story-wise, we start doing some more surprising and exciting and, I don't know, innovative is maybe asking too much kinds of stuff, but we're kind of hitting all the beats right now where it's having a lot of fun with the crossover spectacle, where we've got the Ninja Turtles in the Batcave here, and we bring in a major villain at the end that you really kind of want to see get to work with the Shredder, and so we're doing a lot of the typical kinds of expected stuff, the supervillain team up with the two different worlds and all that stuff that you really kind of want to see. We are halfway in already, and I think we've gotten enough done, but it is a little bit by the numbers, and yet the novelty and spectacle of it is so ramped up and so much fun that I'm entertained by it, but it's not a really great story yet. I don't know if I should expect it to get there. I guess what I'm saying is I want to see Batman and the Ninja Turtles I want to see it explore who they are as people and compare and contrast them a bit more as we go through this, and hopefully we'll do that. But from a fan standpoint, just being a big mega fan of both of these things, yeah, it's such a coup. It's so much fun. It looks like we're probably going to get maybe Batman going to the Ninja Turtles universe here in a little bit too. I'm hoping that happens. I will complain a little bit that it was odd that we didn't have any more mention of the big reveal from the previous issue. I don't remember anything about this coming up, that if the Turtles are in Batman's universe for too long, they're going to turn back into regular Turtles. That's kind of the big stakes, the big conflict, the big thing they have to avoid, the ticking time bomb. We're not talking about it enough, and that's kind of weird. But this is still wonderful. Maybe wait for trade on it if you haven't started it yet, because it's only 6 issues, and I'm sure it'll be a lot more fun in trade. But yeah, the novelty of it, obviously is the reason to get it in the first place. Next up, loved this surprisingly more than I ever would have expected with this series. Superman American Alien number 4. This is number 4 of 7. This is the Max Landis thing, and I know a lot of people are down on Landis. They don't like him. I know a lot of people are annoyed about things that Landis said about recent things. What was it? Was it Star Wars? Was that the big thing that he was on about that was irritating people? I forget. Anyway, but I really like where things are going with this now, because before, and it is a little bit weird to suddenly shift this, but maybe we'll bookend things and go back around by the end. I would imagine that Landis is going to go there. Previously, you could read these in any order you wanted to. You could read one issue and not read any more of them. They felt like one-shots. It was kind of snapshots in Superman's life in a Superman universe or a DC universe, I should say, as imagined by Max Landis. And this issue starts to build on things the previous issue did with Clark Kent on the yacht pretending to be Bruce Wayne and comparing these major rich people in the DC universe and what their ideals are, and the powerful young leaders in the DC universe and how they're shaping the future. And that's what this one is all about. And we bring all those people together, and we have this wonderful character study of these guys in, again, comparing and contrasting Bruce Wayne, Oliver Queen, Lex Luthor, and even though nobody else realizes it, then with the audience, because it's through his eyes, Clark Kent as this physical powerful force that nobody realizes is this physical powerful force. And of course, once again, we play more with how much fun it was that people thought he was Bruce Wayne for a minute, and the inherent implications of that, just thematically and character-wise, and comparing him to Batman. And then we even do some really cool stuff with Dick Grayson in this. It still has that problem of kind of too conveniently getting major characters in the DC universe together, where Clark just keeps kind of bumping into people. It's not a big deal with the rich people, but then he kind of bumps into Dick Grayson, and that was a little bit convenient and too easy. But whatever. There's some. I really love all the talk about the difference between being arrogant and being confident, and even if it's possible to earn arrogance, and especially in comparing Oliver Queen to Lex Luthor, because Lex, I think, sees himself as not arrogant, where it's not even earned arrogance. It's I just am who I am, and everyone should understand that. He talks a lot about how he has this inherent ambition and drive and ability to change the world and help people in a way that most people don't and aren't even striving for, and that warrants his attitude. And I don't even know if you would call it arrogance the way he talks about it. And I thought that was really great, once again, in contrasting with Oliver Queen, who's now been back from the island and is talking about this arrogant person he used to be versus this more responsible person he's starting to turn into. And anyway, so just all that stuff. I guess I should be careful and not give too much away and not just sit here and try to analyze the book. But it was very thoughtful and it was very thought provoking, and it made me think about a lot of stuff. And then when I'll just say that when Clark Kent finally deals with Bruce Wayne in this universe, it's a cool showdown, and it's not exactly the way we've seen it done before. Should not surprise anyone how much Batman versus Superman stuff we're finding in DC this week, and all from very different perspectives and different sets of ideas from different writers, and fun to see that from a lot of different points of view. Next up, Silver Surfer, number 2. Of course, one of my favorite books on the stand still. This is written by Dan, because anybody buys comics on stands. Maybe your comic shop has stands, but not newsstands. Written by Dan Slott with art by Michael Allred, or by the Allreds, Michael Allred, Laura Allred. So we're getting into some Silver Surfer background stuff with his home planet of Zenla, and we're dealing with some of with some of the lore and history of his planet that has not really been delved into much, as far as I'm aware. Although there was a really long Silver Surfer run, not really long, was it like 80-something issues, I forget, in the mid-90s, and I guess it's possible that they dealt with some of that stuff there, but this gets into this notion that the people of his planet were afraid to give their technology to anyone, and they became isolationists, and they stopped going out into space because they felt like they had a responsibility not to negatively affect the universe, and they were afraid that they would hurt people. And there's this big mystery as to why exactly that is. I like that a lot. I like that we're exploring why exactly they stopped traveling the stars and stuff. Because I'm dealing with Man of Steel right now for the Superhero Rewind, and one of my I guess I'm giving this away, the thing that I'll probably say in my review, but one of the things that I'm finding frustrating about that is that that movie is not clear enough as to why exactly Krypton felt the need to become isolationist and stop going into space. And this opens with that, with Silver Surfer's planet, and I just really appreciated that in contrast. I don't know that Dan Slott was thinking about Man of Steel. I don't mean to compare everything to that movie. It was just on my mind, and I thought it was really cool that they dealt with it. We are escalating the big threat that we had in the last issue. I wasn't expecting that would come back in any way, and we're suddenly getting a lot more Arky in this book, which I guess I should have expected since we're on Earth and it looked like we might stay on Earth for a while. But previously we would have maybe 2 or 3 issue arcs in a place, and sometimes we would have kind of just singular issue stories. And that's what the first issue kind of read like, with a kind of a cliffhanger ending with the Thing. And now we're already dealing with the Thing, and dealing with how he's involved with the Thing, with the device that was able to steal all of Earth's culture in the first issue, and now we have this massive version of it, and there's this big mystery as to what exactly that's for. We see the return of Alicia Masters here. We're dealing with the fact that the Fantastic Four isn't around anymore, and that it's kind of this topsy-turvy world that Silver Surfer doesn't recognize anymore. I think Dan Slott is maybe even criticizing the new Marvel status quo a little bit, or if he's not, he's just having Silver Surfer react to it the way Silver Surfer would react to it, and I appreciated that a lot. This is still a really whimsical book, but it's starting to get a little bit plottier, and that's not a problem. I'm very interested in in what we're building here, and it's starting to get kind of complex in its in its storytelling and its plot, and that's kind of exciting. So anyway, next up, as I said before, that's a thing that I would really recommend starting with the first issue, and even if you didn't read the previous run of this, it's easy to pick this up and start reading it, but I would also really recommend that run, because this is certainly part of it, even though we renumbered it. It's just a good jumping on point, but it's absolutely wonderful. Next up, I have next to nothing to say about Carnage number 5. I said last time I did the show that I haven't really been caring for this very much, and it's just not grabbing me and holding my attention. It wants to be this really creepy, haunting book, and it wants to be this twisted psychological thriller, I think, but it's not really doing that, and it's doing a lot of typical, it's Jerry Conway, and it's doing a lot of very typical 90s superhero book stuff with a prophecy about Carnage that seems like just a, I don't know, kind of dull, obvious choice, and it's not grabbing me. Carnage and the occult are not things that really go together, and some of it is probably just my taste and sensibility. We are at the end of an arc here, although it doesn't feel like it, and it tries to do this clever thing with cliffhangers and Carnage not liking cliffhangers, so then it's not a cliffhanger, but it sort of is, and it wasn't that clever to me, but whatever. Like I said, I'm not loving this. But we are going to move on to a new arc next time, so we're at least getting out of the caves, or not the caves, excuse me, I guess I'm thinking about Smallville. The mine, and it's, I don't know, I was excited about Carnage in a mine. I just thought that was a really simple, potentially horrifying, kind of intimate story you could tell, and it tried to get too big too quick, I think. And it seems like kind of the point of this arc is just to make Carnage a lot more powerful, and I guess we'll see if there's any good reason for that moving forward. I will keep getting this because I collect Carnage, and hopefully it gets a lot better as it goes along, but right now, I'm disappointed. This is one of the books I was most excited about, and I'm not loving it. Superman, Lois, and Clark, number 5. This is still kind of fun. Neil Edwards and Dan Jurgens. Still not loving a lot of, or there's still a lot of Dan Jurgens' dialogue that's pretty clunky and sometimes kind of sappier than it needs to be, and he's still doing very much his kind of 90s thing and not really catching up to the times and using, more modern conventions of storytelling or of writing. He is a storytelling, I think, a little bit more, but not in the dialogue so much, but that is really my only complaint. We're getting toward a place where Lois and Clark are going to have to start dealing more with talking to their kid about who they really are, and the family drama, I think, is kind of more interesting than anything else going on in this book. Clark is starting to have to learn to not judge books by their covers and expect things to be exactly the way they were in his world, because the Hank Henshaw here is not the Hank Henshaw from there. I hope that he has to deal with Cyborg Superman at some point, because Cyborg Superman in this universe, in the 52 and post-52 universe, is actually Zor-El, and I kind of hope that he has to deal with him at some point. I think that would be really cool, and I think it would be fun to somehow rather rope Hank Henshaw into all of that at some point. I guess this book is going to keep going. It's a monthly, and I don't know, I don't know how long of a run it'll get, but there's all kinds of really interesting things you could do with a Superman that with the 90s Superman that died and came back from the dead, who expects certain things and won't get them, but then maybe the world starts to coalesce to that a little bit as things go along. This is still, I say that this is good comic book soap opera, which is funny because it's Lois and Clark, but it's not the kind of soap opera that the TV show Lois and Clark was. But it's probably still not a thing that you'd love unless you read a lot of Jurgens in the 90s and you're a big Death of Superman fan and that kind of stuff. I think you have to be somebody like me that grew up with that stuff to really enjoy this. Or you might like it, but it's just not likely to hit your sensibilities. So, but I do think this is probably an easy thing to pick up, really, anywhere. I mean, I think you could pick up this issue and get what's going on, because he gives you quite a bit of recap. But, and we're also dealing with Batman here, also. Sometimes I like symmetry in my sentences. Book ended with also. I would have loved to have found some way to make that a palindrome. Next up, Star Trek Starfleet Academy #3. This is written by Mike Johnson and Ryan Parrott, with art by Derek Charm. And the art in this is odd because it looks kind of like Batman the Animated Series, and it feels like that's kind of on purpose, where it has a little bit of the sensibility of the Filmation show, with, of course, a little bit more depth to it and more detail, although it's not as detailed as it probably would be if it weren't going for that. But it also kind of makes me think of what what I always imagined an animated Star Trek show would be like now, if you did it. So it's got a little bit of, like, 90s, like Bruce Timm animation style, drawing style, with the Filmation Star Trek thing. Anyway, we're going back to Enterprise with this, which is kind of fun. Not actually dealing with Enterprise, but that era where you have another ship. I think it's like the NXO. The NXO-4 or something, and we've got your kind of typical the plot where there was a mutiny, and that happened a long time ago, and it wasn't in the records, and it turns out the Starfleet covered it up because they don't want people to think that that happens in Starfleet. You get that line from Picard in an early TNG episode where he's like, a mutiny on a Federation starship. That's unheard of, and it's kind of fun when we play with that and say, what if it's propaganda, and that the future isn't really quite the utopia we make it out to be, because people are still people, and we still make mistakes, and sometimes we look out for ourselves before other people, and the world isn't black and white, and questioning what things are necessary to do and for the sake of the greater good, and all of that stuff. And it suddenly starts to feel a little bit more in a DS9 vein than anything. I don't have a lot to say about these new characters yet. I kind of want to finish this book and see where things are going. We're dealing with some elements of the Abrams verse. Like, this takes place, a few years before all that, and so you have Admiral what's his face from Star Trek Into Darkness, Carol Marcus's dad, Admiral Marcus. And you're kind of seeing some of those colors that led him to the conspiracy he had in that early on, with an argument that he has with Uhura. And you have, like, the nicest Tellurite ever with some of this new cast. The female Vulcan is potentially fascinating, and she's this cadet who her family kind of pushed her to be in Starfleet, and that's a thing that we've done with some other characters here and there in Star Trek. And but of course the twist now is all of that is kind of for naught now because Vulcan exploded. And so I said this was a few years before Abrams. This seems to be kind of just before Darkness, but it's after 09. And anyway, but I don't know. She looks like she could be kind of interesting. And then, like I said, yeah, this is like the most polite and happiest Tellurite ever. And I just need to learn some more about these people. But they're going to investigate this this ship that was with this mutiny back in the NX days, and I wasn't really liking the first two issues. This one grabbed me a little bit more, and I'll be interested if I can find the time to review it on the whole later on. Hey, look, it's Spawn number 261. What's the big selling point for Spawn right now? Art by Eric Larson. Art. If there is a selling point in Spawn, it's always art. Art over story. Eric Larson. If you like looking at really pretty but gaudy and macabre, gothic, hellish imagery, then this is for you. It's awesome. Todd McFarlane is putting out an adult coloring book in April for Spawn. It's gonna be a lot of early covers and interiors. And I don't know if it's all his art, but he keeps talking it up like it's his art. And I think that all of Spawn should be a coloring book, because I'm already buying it because I collect it, but I would buy it and have nothing to complain about. Anyway, this is still, convoluted like always because it's Spawn. We're getting to the end of his going through hell and trying to rescue Wanda. He is having to maybe make a big sacrifice, but it's weird because he's dealing with Satan. Because now we have Satan instead of Malbolgia. We're dealing with Satan. And Spawn... And Satan wants Spawn's costume, because it's always about the frickin' costume. And Spawn says, take it, I don't care. And then at the end, Satan's like, you're gonna have to spoil... This is a little spoiler. You're gonna... I will give you everything you've ever wanted if you just give me your costume. But he just said a couple pages ago that he's, like, totally cool with it. So I don't know why it's this big dramatic thing at the... Oh, man, what's he gonna do? It's like, he just said he doesn't care about the costume. Like, it seems like there's no conflict or drama anymore. You just gave Spawn everything he wanted, and he's perfectly happy giving away his... The art is fun. Moving right along. The Coming of the Supermen. Here's a crazy thing. This is number 1 of 6. It's another one of these DC 6-issue miniseries. I like these. I wish they would do even more of them. This is by Neil Adams. He is writing and drawing, and with the exception, if it weren't for the fact that there are references to tweets and social media culture and stuff, you would read this, and if I told you it was published in 1993, you would believe me. It is not throwback. It is completely authentically Neil Adams going back in time. Almost like he pulled this book out of a drawer and then just wrote in some of the... took some white out and in some of the balloons put in mentions to modern culture. That's what it reads like. This is a crazy mix of random things all together in a story that will hopefully kind of come more together as it goes along. You have parademons and Calabac, and maybe Darkseid sent them, maybe they didn't. You have this group of Supermen with different hair colors that are talking about Rao and stuff, so they seem to be Kryptonian, or think they're Kryptonian, but it's very mysterious as to where they came from. You have a Superman that is not helping them fight the parademons and stuff, and I'm a little bit fuzzy as to why, because he's around, but he, doesn't immediately show up and deal with it. I guess he's dealing with this other demon-looking guy that's talking really cryptically and acting like Cagliostro and being obnoxious. Just come out and tell me what you're talking about. But maybe part of it is just the way it's organized, because you got all this stuff going on in the background, and then you have Clark at various places with this kid that this demon-looking guy, this gargoyle-looking guy, puts him in charge of, who just forces him to do that, and then you've got all these parademons, and Superman doesn't seem to be dealing with them. I read it once. Maybe it would make more sense on a second read. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. Superman is kind of dumbed down in this, where he punches things and asks questions later. As soon as someone seems to be maybe threatening him, he immediately tries to fly at them and start punching, which I know happens a lot when you have superheroes who first meet and they gotta punch for a while, so you get some exciting action before they finally go, oh, it was all a misunderstanding. But here it seems even sillier than that, and he just seems really slow on the uptake. And yet, it was a fun read. I like how just, totally bombastic and over the top it is. Lex Luthor is always pointing. If he's in a panel, he's gonna be pointing. And he's your more slightly heavy-set Lex Luthor. He's like the 90s Lex that's not the Lex Luthor 2 with the beard and with the red hair and the beard and all of that. He's like your traditional... slightly larger Lex, and it's crazy, and it's not as crazy as what little of the Batman thing he did a few years ago. What is that called? It's not coming to me. I'm sure a million I'm sure I'll get a bunch of comments that where people will mention it. But anyway, but it's him doing Superman by himself, and it's not quite that crazy yet, but I think it has every potential of getting that way. This is a curiosity and nothing else, but if you love 90s Superman and you are just fascinated by modern Neil Adams, then you gotta do yourself a favor and pick up that the crazy comes at the very end with Egyptian stuff, and that's all I'm saying. Ghostbusters International #2. This is Eric Burnham with our Ghostbusters Dream Team. Eric Burnham with art by Dan Scherning. And you've got this guy who, at the end of the first issue, wanted to buy the Ghostbusters, and of course, they're not letting that happen, but they make a deal where he's able to hire them for an extended period, and then they go overseas, and they're in Venice, and so it's Ghostbusters in Venice, and dealing with some ghosts there. And it is fun. It's what this book usually is. It's a whole lot of fun, crazy banter with a little bit of interesting character stuff here and there driving it. A lot of the humor is about business and politics, and circa early 90s, and a lot of that is clever and fun. It is kind of what I've come to expect from the Ghostbusters book. There's not anything that's like blowing me away or really surprising me yet. The stakes don't feel gigantic or anything, but it's a fun read. Back to the Future #5. I have been more and more down on this book, but this one turned me around a little bit. I liked this more than I have lately. I still am really hoping that this book is allowed, now that it's a monthly, to actually put Marty and or Doc Brown in a time machine and go forward and do time travel stuff. I know that initially Bob Gale said that wasn't going to happen, that he didn't want that, besides the fact that they did a video game, that he didn't want that, and this was just going to fill in the gaps, but that's what he was saying with the miniseries. I just don't see doing nothing but gap filling, and I hope that we don't do that. This gives you a background for Clara, and it's a pretty smart one, and I buy it, and it has this very nice kind of study of the contrasting the differences between Doc Brown and Clara, and what they want and what they're all about, and it's more about the story of how she initially came to Hill Valley and all of that, but it's really consistent with what we know about her with the Jules Verne stuff and her penchant for adventure and all of that. And so by the end, the idea is that Doc Brown wants to settle down, and he's kind of done with adventure, and she fell in love with him because of adventure and is obsessed with the idea of getting to time travel and see the future, and who wouldn't be. And so it gives us a really good excuse for why that train would get built, because with all of his talk about not messing with the timeline anymore and destroying the time machine and all of that, it feels like just another punchy ending like the end of 1. And here there's a really decent argument for it, and I like that a lot. And I also feel like it would be a good argument for having them continue to do more things past this. I kind of doubt that it would be enough for her to just go on the train track at the end and talk to Marty, and then that's it. With as badly as she wants to get to explore time and kind of live in a Jules Verne novel. I also thought the art in this was pretty great, and I'm just hoping, like I said, that we do more cool stuff beyond this that's not just gap filling. But for the gap filling, this is probably the best issue, and it's not relying so heavily on clever wink wink nod nods to the audience of, you've heard this line before, but it's in a different context. There's a little of that. It's not as obnoxious as it has been, and this is probably my favorite issue so far. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #55. This is, of course, by Tom Waltz, with art by Michael Delanis, which is serviceable. It's a little bit more pencily and gritty than what we have with Santaluco. I'm not a big fan, though, of some of the facial expressions. It's a little bit too, I don't want to say cartoony, because this book does have a little bit of that sensibility, but the wrong kind of cartoony, I guess, is the way to put it. This is not a great issue compared to what this book has been and usually is. It's okay. I'm usually talking this thing up like crazy. This feels like kind of I don't want to say filler issue. It's kind of a, because filler issue implies random one-shot story you didn't really need that you could skip. This is more kind of biding our time until Santaluco comes back, because he's coming back in the new issue, and getting to the really exciting stuff. So this is more like aftermath / preamble for the cool stuff when we, and I feel like it's okay to spoil this because it's right at the beginning that we know this is going to happen, going back to Burno Island and dealing with the Technodrome again. But anyway, a lot of this, and I guess what I'm mostly reacting to is that it just goes on too long. There's an argument with Casey and April that's building on what we did with them in their miniseries, which I didn't love. It was okay. But the relationship drama stuff with them is not as sophisticated and compelling as it used to be, and maybe reading all of it together when I go back I'll like it a little bit more, but I just feel like we've been kind of meandering with that, and it's overstayed its welcome a little bit. It's trying to play like it's come to a boil, but I guess the problem is I don't care about it the way I used to really, really care about the relationship, and I think he's gotten maybe a little bit too whiny, and I don't know. I'm just, it's not, I don't want to say juvenile, but it didn't, I just didn't care the way I feel like I ought to care. The ending with Michelangelo, I won't give away what's going on, but is, and the other turtles is exciting, and we're doing more stuff with Alopex. I think that Waltz is really good at making sure that everybody gets something to do, and keeping track of all of his characters. So if we haven't seen somebody in a while, he's got that person in the back of his mind, and he or she is going to come back, and we're going to tell more story with them, and we're going to continue to progress their character and not just see them like hit something and then move on. Everybody is always in flux and is, experiencing life and changing and growing. All in all, it's okay. But I think you could have skipped some of this and gotten right into the interesting stuff, or at least not belabored the character drama stuff, or the relationship drama stuff so much. I probably sound like I hate relationship dramas, like romances. Like, as soon as I see a romance, I just start immediately rolling my eyes. It's not like that. They can just be hard in superhero comic book stuff sometimes, and I hold Waltz to a standard because that stuff usually is really good, and I think it's starting to, some of the dialogue here was bordering on a kind of melodrama that he's usually better than. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff I'm reading and watching right now that is way above. For him, wasn't super impressed with it. Oh geez, did I read this? Radioactive Spider-Gwen #5. I love this book. It's been a couple weeks since I read this. Oh man, what happens in this? Oh yeah, we've got, we brought back Matt Murdock, and of course he's terrifying in this. He's this universe's Kingpin, and he is, the biggest selling point for this issue is he's wearing a t-shirt calling back to Mark Waid when Matt Murdock had the t-shirt that said, "I'm not Daredevil," saying, "I'm not the Kingpin." And I want that shirt because it's fantastic. But he's a master manipulator, and he's ruining people, and he's dealing with, he's basically put Captain Stacy in this terrible position because, if memory serves, I think the deal is he knows that Gwen Stacy is Spider-Girl, and that, or does she call herself Spider-Woman in this? The book is called Spider-Gwen, I always forget. And so he's put him between a rock and a hard place and trying to blackmail him, and this is very much a street level gritty crime drama book, and a lot of the drama is built around that blackmail, and this continues to be wonderful. Like I said, it's been a couple weeks since I read this, so it's not real fresh in my mind, but yeah, read this book. This not a good jumping on point. I do think with Spider-Gwen, you probably need to go back to at least the first issue of the new run, but I also think that Spider-Gwen reads a lot better if you just go back to even the beginning of it. And the nice thing is, the previous run was not very many issues before the reboot happened, so easy to do. Real briefly, here is a Batman Arkham Knight one-shot with Batgirl. It's okay. It's serviceable. What we have here is a couple of stories that are linked. I like that it's not two random stories about her, and it reads almost like one big story where, but again, it's kind of not a big story, but like a story that just takes place in kind of with some time in between. But you don't realize that. You think that when you start the second story, you're just reading a totally different thing. They're actually connected, surprisingly. But anyway, this is the beginning of Batgirl in the Arkhamverse, and it deals with, surprisingly, a lot of the same ideas that, with a couple ideas that Arkham Knight deals with, and then all the stuff that the little Batgirl DLC deals with. And I actually read this before I played that DLC, and was not as impressed with it after that, because I realized that a lot of the stuff that it's doing was already in that DLC, but it's at least, consistent. This basically gives us the idea that Batgirl in Arkham Knight, in the Arkhamverse, is the first person to deal with Harley Quinn, and both this and the DLC map pack thing story pack thing is dealing with the idea that both of them are female knockoffs of a male superhero or supervillain, and it's dealing with how they feel about it and what their attitude is about that, and how their motivation for why they're the superhero and the supervillain. And the big thing, of course, that differentiates Batgirl from Harley Quinn, which she has to explain to Batman, is she's inspired by Batman, but she's not doing it for him. And Harley Quinn is not inspired by the Joker, she wants to be the Joker, and that's the big distinction, and I like that a lot. You've got Harley Quinn in the DLC telling Batgirl how much of a fake and wannabe she is, and of course that's completely hypocritical because she's not thinking about the fact that she's that way with the Joker. And this kind of is the reverse of that a little bit, where Batgirl is telling her how much of a knockoff she is of the Joker. So maybe that's Harley Quinn getting back at her a little bit in the DLC, because that happens much later, of course. All in all, I kind of enjoyed this. It doesn't do anything just spectacular and breaks is super surprising and changes hearts and minds. Art's pretty good. It's nice fill-in stuff. It's nice background stuff for Batgirl in that world. And like I said, I think it's pretty consistent with the continuity that we have there. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is not a brand new book, but something else that I just got recently. And I'm going to do this more with new acquisitions, where if I get cool issues, especially collector's things, makes sense in the title, new acquisition, so it doesn't have to be a thing that was on the stands this week. Here's in the comic shops this week. Here's a thing that I bought from an eBay auction that Vince sent me. Thanks, Vince. Thanks for getting me to spend $25 on this. Here is a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Tick issue. I'm probably the only person that cares about this, but I'll tell you about it anyway. And I want to start telling you more about my Tick collection, because it has become massive over the last couple of years, and I've done nothing on it yet. I think I had it in the background of a couple of videos, and folks have asked me about it a little bit. I will, sometime in the near future, do a video on my Tick shrine. I am starting to build what I'm hoping will become the world's definitive Tick collection, and I think I'm on my way. I need to do a video on that sometime in the near future for the 12 of you that care. Anyway, so this is a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. There are only 250 of these made, and I got number 78. That's a pretty good number, and I read this today, and it's fun. It's more of a skit than a story, really, but sometimes little Tick issues like this are that, and it's basically the Tick and Arthur going to an art museum, and there's this great joke about how Arthur, I'm not going to worry about spoilers because there's only 250 of these, how Arthur's name, he says, I love art. He says, my middle name is Art, and then breaking the fourth wall, he looks out of the panel and he says, and my first name is also Art, and I thought that was pretty funny. Not the super weird Tick you usually get. This is, in comics, this is tamer than that. There's nothing bizarre really in this. It feels more like an interlude in an animated Tick episode. It feels like a 5-minute, little adventure. But there's this great montage where, so they're standing in line for what they think is, I guess I'll just spoil this issue. Nobody's going to get to read this. They're standing in line for, if you want to go try to find it and spend $25-$30, you might be able to read it, but I'll go ahead and tell you about it. If you don't want to know, then turn the video off. Most of you aren't Tick fans. You probably already have anyway. For the 12 people still watching, they're standing in line for what they think is an art museum, and at the end, it turns out that it's actually not that. Because of course, I'm reading this and I'm like, why would there be this long of a line for an art museum? And then and Arthur's really excited to go, and then things keep coming up, and they keep having to run off and deal with horrible things happening in the world, and monsters and supervillains, and it gets more absurd as it goes along, and there's this big montage of all these things they have to go stop, and that's the most fun part of the issue. And then at the end, it turns out that there's a carnival in town. And there's this joke where the lady, when they get up, it's obvious it's a carnival in the background. I don't know why. I don't know how Arthur stood in line that long and didn't notice it, or didn't hear anybody in line talking about carnival stuff. I just thought of that, but whatever. And they get to the front of the line, and she's like, the carnival's in town. And he's like, are you making fun of our outfits? And she's like, no, the carnival's in town. And he's like, oh, I thought this was the line for the art museum. She's like, no, it's open only for 45 more minutes. And then they go to the art museum, and I guess badum-ching. But the montage was great. Anyway, that is everything this week. So there we go. A month's worth of stuff. Thanks as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will come back with you as soon as humanly possible with another new acquisitions and talk about some new comics, and I will try to get caught up on stuff so that I can talk about more books for you. And in the meantime, if you're in the Kansas City area, check out Elite Comics in Overland Park. They're fantastic. We appreciate them. Thanks very much, William and Company, and thank you very much for watching. If there's anything you're reading that's awesome, that you think I should be reading too, feel free to leave comments, tell me about it. And if you read any of these issues and you liked them or didn't like them or think I'm a crackpot, tell me why, and leave that stuff in the comments. Sure appreciate it. I'm Captain Logan, and as always, happy reading.